that brings the May. Hail, hail, the first of May, for it is the first summer's day. As Lord airs and hears away into the old chorus on the first of May. Bluebells they have started to ring, oh, and true love it is a thing, oh, love on any other day is never quite the same as on the first of May. Hail, hail, the first of May, for it is the first summer's day, oh, as Lord airs and clears away into the old chorus on the first of May.
And over the years, many people have celebrated the beginning of May, May Day, Beltane, the festival of Flora, the Roman goddess, and I think it's a great time to gather and to kind of, as a community, to rejoice in what's happening in nature and to give ourselves a kind of sense of, you know, things are getting better, the climate is changing for the year again, and to take stock of where we've been and what we've done and what we hope to do for the future. So May Day for me is a hope and a springing and a thought of future times to come, and a gathering. Is perhaps the first time we might gather as a community, and the orchard is the perfect place. I think it's partly because as we stand with the trees, it's that sense of we are not quite in a garden, but we're not quite in a wild woods either. We're in this lovely place where nature and humans can come together and culture can take root as well. Many different ways we've celebrated May over the years, singing in songs, Morris dancing like the good old wild Morris, telling of stories, of course, feasting, eating and drinking. So there's loads of traditions of May. I wonder what traditions you remember. Maybe maypole dancing when you were at school. Still happens, and sometimes in Bridport we see the maypoles going up and people dancing. I know just a little bit further away in Abbotsbury there was a great floral day, and a garland was made of flowers, and originally that garland would have been taken and thrown onto the sea, onto the waves, as a blessing for the fertility of the sea, for the fishermen to bring back a good catch. And all around in Cornwall and other parts of the southwest there's floral dances and ways to kind of really invoke that extraordinary kind of sense of occasion that the beginning of May has. It's sometimes said it's a time of year where the veil between worlds is drawn thin, and of course there's lots of fairies about at May Day and that time of year, and just tweaking the blossoms to help them open, perhaps invisibly seen or just out of the corner of your eye. There's lots of stories that relate about the fairies waking up and helping in turn to wake up nature and the fields and the farms around them. So I'm hoping that you'll be following your traditions in your way, perhaps seeking out a patch of bluebells and going to see those, or coming here into the orchard and seeing and sensing and scenting the blossom on the trees. And we look forward to gathering with you again when we can do a song and a dance and celebrate May properly.
Our first dance this afternoon is Webley Jig, which is from the village of Bampton in Oxfordshire.
Hello and welcome to the Bridport Community Orchard, which has now been in existence for around, I think this is year 14 if my memory serves me correctly. From the outset, the aim of the orchard was to plant, naturally, an orchard, but something more special than just an orchard. Included within the orchard there would be trees which have a local connection, so Dorset and Southwest trees. And I'm standing beside one of those right now. This tree is called Tom Putt. It dates back to the 18th century from Trent near Sherborne, so it's a North Dorset tree. It's what's known as a spur-bearing apple tree, and if you have a look you'll see these little spurs here coming off the branch, and those are the little spurs which bear the fruit. The other type of apple tree is a tip-bearing apple tree, and they tend to bear their fruit at the end. So Tom Putt comes into fruit usually early September, depending on the season and the year, sometimes a little earlier, sometimes a little later. The fruit themselves are quite large, conical fruits with a red stripe in them, and they're used, culinary use of course, but they make excellent juicing apples, and we produce an awful lot of juice from the Tom Putt because they're very prolific in the number of apples that they produce each year.
It's apple blossom time, come sing this song of mine. Some white, some shades of pink, time to dwell and not to think. I love a bit of apple blossom, apple blossom, apple blossom. Love a bit of blossom for the planet, for the bees. I love a bit of apple blossom, apple blossom, apple blossom. Love a bit of blossom for the planet, for the bees. The smell is sweet and floral, with slightest hint of apple. My heart it starts to sing as we wave goodbye to spring. I love a bit of apple blossom, apple blossom, apple blossom. Love a bit of blossom for the planet, for the bees. I love a bit of apple blossom, apple blossom, apple blossom. Love a bit of blossom for the planet, for the bees. The summer we do welcome, the orchard's always open. A time for contemplation underneath the apple blossom. I love a bit of apple blossom, apple blossom, apple blossom. Love a bit of blossom for the planet, for the bees. I love a bit of apple blossom, apple blossom, apple blossom. Love a bit of blossom for the planet, for the bees.
An interesting butterfly that you'll see in early May is the orange tip. This is in the cabbage family. It's related to the large white and the small white, which are two butterflies that you often see flitting around your cabbages during the summer, which are a bit of a nuisance. The orange tip is very distinctive in that it's got orange tips to its wings. The female has black tips to its wings, and it's got three food plants which are unexpectedly in the cabbage family. One of them is the cuckoo flower, also known as a lady's smock. Another one is honesty, which you sometimes plant in the garden as an ornamental flower. And the third one is Jack by the hedge, which is also known as hedge garlic. The caterpillars of the orange tip feed on these plants in April and early May, and you'll see the butterflies flitting around. They're reasonably common up until about the 15th of May.
Once upon a time in Dorset there was a man who was a gardener. He had a stone house and a little garden behind where he grew vegetables to fill his belly and flowers to fill his sense. But in the middle of his little garden there was an apple tree. A gorgeous apple tree that in the springtime was covered in delicate blossom, and each blossom had a bee's bottom, and in the ancient ritual of pollination, so the honey came into the hive and the apples came onto the trees. And all through the summer those fruits would swell and sweeten, and then in the autumn time he'd have apples to give away to his friends, and some of course he left on the tree for the winter birds to feed upon. Well, it was in the springtime when the scent of the orchard was filling the night air, and he was asleep in his own bed with the window open, when he had a dream. A strange dream where a bird flitted down, a little blue tit, and it started to speak words in English. And the blue tit told him to go to London Bridge. A strange dream, and so powerful and vivid. And it took him a while before he fell asleep, but eventually he did. And for the second time, the same dream, the same bird, the same words. And now he's lying awake wondering what to do. Why should I go to London Bridge? And it was only just before dawn when he fell asleep again. And then the third time he had the third dream. Go to London Bridge and great good will come to it, said the blue tit. And now, of course, what could he do? What would you do? He packed his bag with a little food, he put on his best walking boots with a dog at his heel, he set off away from his own garden towards London town, and it took him all of that day, and sleeping that night by the side of the road with an earth for a pillow and the sky for a blanket. And it was late on in the following day when he finally arrived into London. He made his way to London Bridge, and there was a great bustle of business, people coming to buy and sell. All the shops were open that day. And he was standing and staring and waiting and thinking what on earth he should be doing on London Bridge. When the sky turned red, it was the end of the day, and he was feeling despondent that nothing had happened. Why did he go to London Bridge in the first place? He was just about to turn on his heels and walk away home when a man appeared with a fine set of clothes and a top hat upon his head and a supercilious smile. He was the kind of man who knew the price of everything but the value of nothing. What do you come here for? I've seen you standing on this bridge. You're not buying, you're not selling, so tell me, what business of yours have you got here on London Bridge? And the gardener from Dorset, he told the truth, that in his garden there was a scented apple tree, and that night he dreamed about a bird telling him to go to London Bridge. Dreams, said the wealthy merchant. It wasn't dreams who got me where I am in my life. You know what? I had a dream last night. I had a dream about a garden in Dorset with an apple tree in it, and underneath the roots of the apple tree there was buried treasure. Now, do you think I'm going to waste my time wandering around the countryside looking for that? But he didn't get an answer, because the gardener had turned on his heels already, and he was beginning his quick march back home. He got home even quicker than it took him to get there, and as soon as he did, taking a spade and very gently digging underneath the roots of the old apple tree, sure enough, the spade hit a metal box, and he opened up the metal box, and inside there was a treasure. Now, sometimes I ask people to imagine for themselves what kind of treasure was in the box, but I once asked a little girl from St Mary's School just across the way from the orchard here, and she said that inside that box there was a whole collection of little golden apples. And she said that every day the man would open up his box and a bird would fly down and pick up one of the small golden apples and take it to the person in the village or in the area that needed it the most. So with that wise ending to an old story, we wish you the blessings of the blossom in the autumn and many apples to come in autumn.
I'm standing beside another Dorset apple. This one's called Granfers. It was rediscovered in Bedminster, near Bedminster. So it's the most local apple that we have in the orchard. And it's a culinary apple, another spur-bearing apple, and it produces a heavy crop, so it's well worth having in the orchard. When I say it was rediscovered, David Squirrel, a local apple guru is probably the best way to describe him, who was heavily involved in the early days of the orchard and choosing and selecting the trees, still comes along annually to collect scions, as they're called, from the prunings, which he then uses to produce more Granfers apple trees. So it's not only named Granfer, there's lots of its children around in the local area now. So it's come back to life, which is wonderful.
Our next dance is a stick dance from the village of Adderbury in Oxfordshire, and this is known to us as shooting, but its official name is Bow of London City.
One of the most important areas of the Bridport Community Orchard is the wildlife area. This is quite a large area which we started to develop in 2009. That's when we dug our pond, which is behind me here, and this has been extremely successful in all the wildlife that it's supporting. We've got frogs in there and toads, and we've got two types of newts, the palmate newt and the common newt. The frogs actually lay their frog spawn in late February, early March, and we've had some again this year, and it is turning into tadpoles already. By May Day, the 2nd of May, those tadpoles will be quite large and developing their distinctive legs, which eventually become frog. Other wildlife in the wildlife area is quite a few different wildflowers. One of those is the Celendine, which starts flowering as early as late December and goes right through to mid to late April. This is a very useful flower for the nectar that it produces for bees when they start flying, even in early January. Other flowers that we get here include red campion, yellow rattle, dandelion, daisy and oxeye daisy. They all add to the diversity of wildlife in the orchard as a whole, and in particular in this wildlife area.
My name is Martin Maudsley, also known as Alan Adale, the singer of songs, drinker of ales, teller of tales, and I'm thinking about the Mummers Play, which we would be doing in May, not this year, but in future years and in past years in May time, in the blossom time of the orchard. We put together a Mummers Play based on Robin Hood. And there was two reasons why we wanted to bring Robin Hood into the orchard. Although he's from Nottinghamshire, we felt like there was a local connection in that in the town there was a pub just the other side of South Street, almost exactly opposite to the orchard. There was a pub called the Robin Hood. It's gone now for quite a number of decades, unfortunately, but there used to be also a brewing of ale every year in the springtime called Robin Hood Ales, and the idea was that they would brew this kind of fresh spring ale. They would sell that beer and raise money for charity. In the days before the NHS and healthcare systems, they would then use the money to look after the poor and the sick. So Robin Hood Ales was in the town, and the Robin Hood pub, I thought, well, this is a good local connection. But then also we've got this beautiful orchard that we celebrate in the autumn time, and in the springtime is also a beautiful place, a fertile place, a flowery place. And of the many spirits of spring that there are, Robin Hood is one of those characters that sort of embodies and personifies the spring. He's one of these perennial characters, maybe a little bit like Peter Pan and Robin Goodfellow, who springs up in the beginning of the year and then dies down later in the year. He's one of those feisty, furtive, fertile spirits. So we put together a Mummers Play, and Robin Hood is the star, and he gathers together a team of men, all the familiar characters, but played by local characters, if you know what I mean. So there's Friar Tuck, who is a purveyor of liquid luck, and there is Much the Miller's son, there is Little John, as tall as ever, and they gather their team together to fight against the tyranny of a rather rapacious landlord, because we are indeed in the times of King John, who, while his brother Richard is away, gaining his lion heart, fighting in the Crusades, King John is intending to enclose the land and make the people pay for the rent of his land. And so we need a hero to rise up with his merry men to go riding through the glen and into the orchard. Robin Hood, riding through the glen. Robin Hood, with his merry men, feared by the rich, cheered by the good. Robin Hood, Robin Hood, Robin Hood. Robin Hood, riding through the glen. Robin Hood, with his merry men, feared by the rich, cheered by the good. Robin Hood, Robin Hood, Robin Hood. And so Robin rides into the orchard, billowing with blossom, and there he runs into Maid Marian's ample bosom.
Well, hello there, rebels, my own merry men. 'Tis I, noble heroine, Maid Marian, a lady of honour, a maiden of beauty, a maid of this orchard that makes me so fruity.
So Aaron and Dale and Maid Marian are in the orchard. We wish you were here.
So we can all get cosy this time next year.
See you then. Robin Hood, riding through the glen. Robin Hood, with his merry men. Feared by the rich, cheered by the good. Robin Hood, Robin Hood, Robin Hood.
I'm standing before an apple tree called Bardsley Island, which has got an interesting history. It was discovered in 1968 on Bardsley Island, growing in a house which dated back to the early 1800s. So it's a relatively rare tree, and one which is still very rare today. We're growing it as an espalier. An espalier is a vertical trunk, and as you can see, arms coming out horizontally. Again, a spur-bearing tree, and by bringing the arms horizontal, that encourages fruiting. So it's a very efficient way of growing apples and getting a maximum crop in a small area.
The next dance is a debut for me and Ruth dancing this together, and it's a field town jig called Nutting Girl.
If you see a blue butterfly in April or early May, 99% certain it will be a holly blue. It's very distinctive in that its undersides are pale white, tinged slightly blue, and the upper sides are pale blue. Its food plant in April and early May is the holly. Interestingly, later in the summer, in July and August, it turns to the ivy for its food plant. And that's when you get your second brood.
Wildlife is a very important aspect to the orchard. From day one, we've been determined to attract as much wildlife as possible to the orchard. And one of the ways in which we do that, or have tried to do that, is by building this bug hotel. Made out of 6 pallets, and each layer of the pallet has a mixture of stones, twiggy bits, bricks with holes in, for various kinds of insects and invertebrates can use as their home, breed and overwinter in. It's been difficult to tell with something like this how successful it's been unless you're standing and watching it for some time and you start to see things coming in and out. These stones, these bricks for example, with the holes in, and the canes are a favourite of bees. Leafcutter bees, for example, will use these to lay their eggs in and overwinter in. So the bug hotel, it's a big bug hotel, but we've got the space to have something of this size.
May Queen, Queen of the May. The origins of this custom may lie with a flower-crowned maid appearing in Floralia festivals as a living representative of the goddess Flora, whom the Romans worshipped on this day. Or perhaps we are tipping a nod to Freya, familiar to Viking and Anglo-Saxon societies as the goddess of springtime, romantic love and flowers, especially flowering trees. Later communities tied in the May Queen tradition with the Catholic Church, making the May Queen a symbol of Mary. As is usual with these traditions, every village, town and community added their own particular twist to the custom. The May Queen traditionally leads the procession and watches over the festivities held in the orchard on May Day. The Jack in the Green was, and indeed is, a traditional participant in May celebration and May Day parades in the UK. He often dons a large framework covered in combinations of foliage and flowers, which might be topped with an intricate crown of flowers. The Jack then parades or dances around, often accompanied by attendants, sometimes known as bogies. They dress in green rags adorned with leaves and flowers, and with their faces, arms and hands covered in green paint. Some bogies interact with those watching by handing out small gifts to children or by adorning the watchers' faces with some of Jack's magic, which to the uninitiated may look remarkably similar to green-faced paint. Morris dancers, musicians and assorted unusual characters may appear alongside Jack. As we can't celebrate May Day in our traditional way, this is a virtual representation of our May Day traditions in the orchard, with the May Queen and Jack in the Green.